Have you ever felt like someone close to you, without saying a word, is silently rejecting you? It's a deep, uncomfortable feeling, but according to Carl Jung, it's more common than we realize. In this video, we'll explore how unconscious mechanisms that we all carry can cause people around us to reject us without us even noticing. And worse, often, they don't even know what they're doing. Have you ever wondered why sometimes, even when you're surrounded by people, you still feel alone? Or why those who seem to care the most suddenly pull away without explanation? Jung shows us that this silent rejection can be hidden in the shadows of our psyche, in what we refuse to admit. And more importantly, this dynamic is happening right now, in your life, without you even realizing it. This video will open your eyes to these subtle signs, revealing how you can understand and protect yourself from these hidden rejections. By understanding these patterns, you'll gain the power to transform your relationships and take control of your own reality. Let's dive into the unknown and reveal what most fear to face. There's a kind of smile that doesn't warm you, it burns. You've felt it before. That tight-lipped grin that arrives right after you've shared something meaningful. It's a compliment wrapped in sarcasm. A good for you that feels more like don't get ahead of yourself. And most people never question it because it looks polite. But Jung would say, there's something far more unconscious at play. Sometimes people reject you not because they hate you, but because your growth reminds them of their stagnation. That passive-aggressive humor, the praise that comes with a backhand, it's a socially acceptable way of minimizing your success, so they don't have to confront their own sense of failure. It's a defense mechanism dressed in manners. And the more you evolve, the sharper those polite smiles become. Let's make this real. Imagine you just started a business or got into shape. A friend says, "Wow, who knew you had it in you?" On the surface, it's encouragement. But underneath, it's a subtle jab. They're trying to remind you of who you used to be, to pull you back into a version of yourself they felt comfortable with. Because now, you're starting to outgrow their shadow. This kind of rejection isn't loud. It doesn't slam the door. It shrinks you slowly through tone, implication, and emotional distance. And it leaves you questioning your own perception. Am I being too sensitive? No. You're just finally seeing things for what they are. Most people aren't aware they're doing it. They've been trained to repress their envy under a mask of civility. Jung talked about the persona, the public face we wear. But even that mask leaks. What people suppress in themselves spills out through these micro-signals. That forced laugh, the silence after your win, the quick subject change when you shine too brightly. The psyche never lies. It just whispers in a language we've forgotten how to hear. And once you do learn to hear it, you start noticing other absences. Not just in smiles, but in presence itself. People who slowly pull away, not because they're busy, but because something in you triggers something in them. It's strange, isn't it? How someone can be there every day, laughing with you, texting back in seconds, planning the next hangout, and then suddenly vanish. No fight, no closure, just a quiet retreat into shadows. You keep replaying everything, trying to find the moment they started to slip away. But that's the trick, there was no moment. Because the withdrawal wasn't about you. It was about what you reflected. Some absences don't scream. They whisper. And in that silence, there's a deeper message. You've become someone I can't be near anymore. Jung believed that what the unconscious can't accept, it avoids. So when someone fades without reason, it's often because you've triggered something they haven't faced in themselves. Maybe your growth exposed their stagnation, or your light disturbed a darkness they were trying to keep hidden. And you sit there, blaming yourself. Did I say something wrong? Should I have done more? No. Stop. Their silence is not your fault. It's their psyche's defense. You were a mirror they didn't ask for. And when people aren't ready to look into that mirror, they run. Disguised as busyness. As just going through something. But their emotional withdrawal is often rejection in its most silent form. Here's a hard truth. When someone fades like that, they're hoping you won't ask. Because confrontation would force them to explain something they don't fully understand themselves. And most people would rather ghost than face that kind of internal contradiction. It's easier to disappear than admit envy, insecurity, or resentment. Especially when they've built their whole identity around being the supportive friend. Ever noticed how the fading often comes after a high point in your life? A promotion, a new relationship, a creative breakthrough? That's not random. It's psychological friction. Your progress pulls on the threads of their unresolved potential. And rather than celebrate you, they retreat, quietly hoping you'll slow down so they can feel safe around you again. But the most dangerous part, the silence feels harmless. It doesn't wound directly, it erodes. And by the time you realize what's happening, you've already lowered your frequency to match theirs. You shrink, hoping they'll come back. You dull your shine, waiting for approval. And just like that, you abandon yourself, without a word. You found something that lights you up. A passion, a purpose, a relationship, a dream. And suddenly, someone close to you starts acting strange. They mock it, downplay it. Are you sure that's really your thing? They laugh it off as a joke, but there's something sharp under the surface. What you're witnessing isn't casual criticism. It's envy wearing politeness like perfume. Jealousy rarely shows up screaming. It whispers. It hides behind advice, concern, sarcasm. And the deeper tragedy? It often comes from people who claim to love you. Carl Jung knew that what we repress doesn't disappear, it distorts. So when someone buries their own unlived desires, they often attack anyone who dares to live theirs. Your joy becomes a reminder of their self-abandonment. And so they sabotage. Not always directly. Sometimes it's a slow erosion. They plant doubts, introduce distractions, offer help that subtly leads you off course. Ever notice how they become more supportive when you're stuck, but distant when you're winning? That's not coincidence, it's unconscious power regulation. The closer you get to thriving, the more they feel left behind. And instead of growing with you, they'd rather pull you down. But here's the twist, they may not even realize they're doing it. That's what makes it so dangerous. Their smile seems real. Their concern sounds sincere. But behind it is a storm of unresolved longing. Jung called this the shadow, the parts of the self we reject and project. Your success brings their shadow to the surface. And instead of owning it, they make it your fault. Ask yourself, how many dreams have you delayed because someone close to you didn't clap? How many passions have you shrunk because their silence made you second-guess yourself? This isn't just emotional sabotage. It's spiritual theft. When people can't kill your drive outright, they chip away at it, quietly, slowly, until you forget what it felt like to be alive. So look around. Who becomes uncomfortable when you're fully yourself? Who only seems stable when you are playing small? Jealousy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a slow poison served with a smile. And the ones who say, "I just want what's best for you," might be terrified of what happens if you actually get it. There's a certain energy that confidence carries. Not arrogance, not noise. Just that calm, grounded presence of someone who knows who they are. But this, paradoxically, can be the very thing that provokes rejection. Why? Because when you walk in your truth, you accidentally shine a light on those still lost in self-doubt. Your peace disturbs their chaos. Your clarity reflects their confusion. Jung believed that people don't see you as you are. They see you as a mirror. And if your reflection exposes something they don't want to see, the reaction won't be gratitude. It'll be resentment. You become the reminder of everything they've denied in themselves: confidence, wholeness, freedom. And so they push you away. Not because you did something wrong, but because you exist as a threat. It doesn't happen in obvious ways. You're not shouted at. You're not criticized directly. No, this kind of rejection is much more subtle. Conversations grow colder. Eye contact disappears. Your wins are met with awkward silence. They begin to question your intentions, twist your words, or frame your certainty as ego. Have you noticed this shift? How suddenly just being yourself is too much? There's a psychology behind this. When someone hasn't integrated their shadow, the rejected, insecure, ashamed parts of themselves, they project it. And what better target than someone standing in self-respect? It's easier to attack the mirror than to look at it. So they isolate you. Not physically always, but emotionally. With passive aggression, cold indifference, or hidden contempt. This can leave you questioning yourself. Did I become arrogant? Am I being insensitive? But here's the truth. If your light was dimming others, they'd just ask you to turn it down. When it blinds them, that's when you know it's their own darkness reacting. Your very presence threatens their false equilibrium. And their rejection isn't about you. It's about everything they've refused to face. So be careful when people tell you you've changed. Often what they really mean is, you stopped shrinking. You outgrew the role they were comfortable assigning you. And now, you're too real to be ignored, too whole to be manipulated. Let that be your proof. Because sometimes the clearest sign you're evolving is the silence that follows when the room no longer feels safe being fake around you. Some of the kindest smiles hide the deepest resentment. They never raise their voice. They never argue. But something always feels off. Their kindness is sterile, their compliments rehearsed. You walk away from them feeling strangely smaller, slightly ashamed, and you don't know why. That's not kindness. That's performance. Carl Jung warned about this. He called it the persona, the mask we wear to survive society. It's not who we are. It's who we think we need to be. And sometimes people wear that mask so tightly for so long that all the rage, envy, and bitterness they repress begins to seep through the cracks. They still say all the right things, but you can feel the hatred underneath. They'll never confront you directly. That would mean breaking character. So instead, they weaponize politeness. A fake laugh when you open up. A helpful suggestion that subtly undermines you. A backhanded compliment wrapped in velvet. These aren't accidents. They're strategic. Because hatred that isn't expressed mutates into control. Here's the catch: you can't fight back. How do you call someone out for being too nice? You end up looking paranoid, or even cruel. That's the genius of the persona. It protects the person wearing it, and isolates the one being targeted. And this is the trap: you begin to doubt your own perception. You second-guess your gut. You wonder if you're the problem. But you're not imagining it. There's a reason you feel tense around certain people, even if they're always smiling. Energy doesn't lie. And when someone hates you silently, it doesn't disappear. It just changes form. It turns into passive sabotage. Emotional distance. Icy support. Their mouth says, "I'm happy for you." But their soul whispers, "I hope you fall." So look deeper the next time someone seems too agreeable. Not every peacekeeper is peaceful. Some are just afraid of their own shadow. And if you're too real, too alive, too unapologetically human, you'll make their mask feel suffocating. And for that, they'll hate you. Quietly, elegantly, and they'll call it kindness. Some people don't control you by shouting, demanding, or threatening. They do it by retreating, just enough to make you chase. They disappear for a few hours, a day, a week, and when they return, they act like nothing happened. But inside you, something already cracked. You feel unsure, small, unworthy. This is not distance. It's a strategy, one that Carl Jung would call a power inversion, a psychological maneuver where silence is used to create tension, and tension is used to create control. It's not about punishing you directly. It's about making you punish yourself. You start questioning, did I do something wrong? Should I apologize? Am I too much? The confusion is the point. And once you're unsure, they win. You'll overcompensate. You'll shrink to keep them close. You'll adjust your tone, suppress your needs, walk on eggshells, just to avoid that sudden coldness again. This isn't love. This isn't friendship. It's psychological puppeteering. And the worst part, they'll deny it all. You're imagining things, but you're not. The pattern is real. They give you attention, then pull it away. Just long enough to starve you emotionally. Then they return with a breadcrumb of connection. And you eat it like a feast. Why? Because you're starving for validation that they deliberately withheld. It's not a relationship. It's an addiction, engineered to keep you dependent. Have you ever felt drained, but couldn't explain why? Like being around someone was emotionally expensive? That's what happens when rejection is used as leverage. It's not direct, but it leaves wounds all the same. Your nervous system stays on edge. Your self-worth gets entangled in their approval. And slowly you stop recognizing yourself. Jung believed that true power doesn't need to dominate. So if someone is playing hot and cold, if they're keeping you close just to control your distance, they're not powerful. They're afraid, and they're hiding it behind manipulation. The question is, how many times will you let someone reject you before you realize they're only close to keep you weak? Not every rejection comes in words. Some arrive like a fog, invisible, heavy, and hard to explain. You sit with someone and feel fine, at first. But minutes pass, hours, and slowly your energy fades. Your thoughts become heavier. Your chest tightens. You leave feeling worse than when you arrived, and you don't know why. Carl Jung believed the psyche communicates in subtle ways, through emotion, tone, and presence. Some people carry unresolved pain like a virus. And if you're sensitive, if you're open, you absorb it. You try to help them. Hold space. Be the light. But slowly, their shadows crawl inside you. Their sadness becomes your weight. Their anxiety, your heartbeat. This is not empathy. This is emotional infection. And it often masks something darker, rejection. Because on a deep, unconscious level, their soul is pushing you away, not with distance, but with darkness. It's like being exiled not physically, but spiritually. They can't say it out loud, but their energy screams, "I don't want you here." And here's the trap. You'll try harder to connect. You'll mistake their heaviness for a cry for help. You'll give more, love harder, sacrifice yourself, hoping to heal what was never yours to fix. But healing someone's wound doesn't work if they're still holding the knife. And some people are, not because they hate you, but because they're addicted to suffering. Ask yourself, why do you feel drained after certain conversations? Why does your peace evaporate around specific people? Not everyone you love is safe to be around emotionally. Jung warned us, the unconscious is contagious. And if you're not grounded, you'll carry home pieces of someone else's inner war and call it your own. You don't have to fight every shadow that touches you, but you do have to recognize when it's not yours. Protecting your energy is not selfish, it's sacred. Especially when the rejection comes in the form of emotional collapse. Because sometimes the most violent way to push someone away is to drown them slowly in your silence, your sorrow, and your self-destruction. Have you ever felt like your true self was a threat? Like your honesty, your openness, your authenticity? Everything that makes you you is met with resistance, even hostility? It's a strange feeling, isn't it? When you're just being yourself, yet the world seems to push back, as though your existence is too raw, too unfiltered for their comfort. Carl Jung understood this phenomenon well. He spoke of the shadow, the unconscious, repressed parts of ourselves that we try to hide. But here's the thing, when you step into the light and reveal your true self, you shine a spotlight on the shadows in others. And for many, that's unbearable. Your courage to be real forces them to confront the parts of themselves they'd rather ignore. And so they retaliate. This isn't just about being different. This is about showing up with the full weight of your authenticity, unapologetically. When you live in a world that thrives on masks and facades, authenticity feels like a blow to the collective ego. People don't just reject you, they punish you. They criticize you. They gaslight you. Because your authenticity reminds them of the parts of themselves they are too afraid to acknowledge. Think about it. Have you ever been called too much? Or too honest? These aren't compliments. They're veiled attempts to shame you back into conformity. They want you to dim your light, to become more palatable. Because in their eyes, your authenticity exposes their insecurities. And it's easier to push you down than face the uncomfortable truth about themselves. But here's the darker truth. When people punish you for being real, they're not just rejecting you. They're rejecting the reflection of themselves they see in you. They resent your freedom because it forces them to ask why they don't have the same. And in their eyes, it's easier to destroy what makes you authentic than to confront their own lack of courage. So what do? How do you protect yourself when the world demands that you wear a mask, that you hide your true self? Jung would tell you to embrace your shadow, to own every part of you, the light and the dark, and to stop allowing others to define your worth. Your authenticity is your greatest power, and if that makes them uncomfortable, let it be a reminder that your truth is exactly what they need to see, even if they can't handle it. Have you ever found yourself blamed for something you didn't do? Have you ever been accused of traits or behaviors that aren't yours, and, in the process, felt completely powerless? It's as if someone took their deepest flaws, their darkest thoughts, and projected them onto you. Suddenly, you become the villain in their story, the scapegoat for everything that's wrong in their world. This is the danger of projection, one of the most insidious weapons in the psychological arsenal. What makes it so dangerous is that it's often done unconsciously. They don't realize that they're projecting their own feelings of guilt, shame, or self-hatred onto you. Instead, they see you as the cause of their discomfort, and the more they push, the more they force you to wear the label of the problem. When someone projects their issues onto you, they create a narrative in which they are the victim and you are the perpetrator. This narrative serves them in two ways. It absolves them from owning their own emotional turmoil, and it shifts the blame onto you. It doesn't matter that you've done nothing wrong. They've already convinced themselves that you are the one to blame. This is the nature of projection. It's a manipulation of perception. Jung understood that projection is a defense mechanism. It allows individuals to maintain a sense of moral superiority by deflecting their own flaws onto others. When someone projects their insecurities onto you, it's not about you at all. It's about their inability to confront their own inner demons. They can't look in the mirror and accept what they see, so they force you to bear the reflection of their fears and insecurities. What makes projection so destructive is its ability to destabilize your sense of self. It's easy to start doubting yourself when someone repeatedly accuses you of things you know aren't true. You begin to question whether you're really the problem. You wonder if you're losing your grip on reality. And slowly, piece by piece, the foundation of your self-worth starts to crumble. This is the power of projection. It turns your world upside down. The key to breaking free from projection is to recognize it for what it is, a manipulation of truth. You must confront it with the clarity of your own self-awareness. When you see the projection for what it is, you stop internalizing it. You stop carrying the blame. Jung's wisdom teaches us that self-knowledge is the antidote to this form of psychological warfare. Once you see through the projection, you regain your power, and the person trying to manipulate you becomes exposed for who they truly are. Have you ever wondered why some people seem completely untouched by the psychological games others play? Why they remain unshaken, no matter how much negativity is thrown their way? It's as if they've developed an invisible shield, a psychological immunity that protects them from manipulation, rejection, and the poison of others' projections. The truth is, this immunity doesn't come from being tough or indifferent. It comes from understanding and mastering your own unconscious mind. Jung believed that the key to psychological immunity lies in becoming conscious of the forces that influence us. Most of us are completely unaware of how the unconscious operates, how our repressed feelings, fears, and unresolved conflicts shape the way we react to others. The moment you start to bring those unconscious elements into the light, you start to reclaim your power. You stop being a victim to the hidden dynamics around you, and instead, you start shaping your own responses with awareness. When you recognize these subtle dynamics, the projection, the passive-aggressive behavior, the emotional manipulation, you gain the ability to see them for what they are. They lose their power over you. But how do you recognize them? It starts with self-awareness. How often do you react to situations without thinking? Do you find yourself playing into someone else's game, even when you know you shouldn't? Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward immunity. Another critical aspect of psychological immunity is boundaries. Without clear, firm boundaries, you are vulnerable to the energy of others. This isn't just about saying no to things you don't want. It's about understanding where you end and where someone else begins. It's about trusting your intuition, your gut feeling when something doesn't feel right. Are you honoring your own space? Or are you allowing others to invade it without consequence? Psychological immunity also requires a deep sense of self-trust. When you are confident in your own truth and in your own worth, the rejection of others becomes less impactful. Why? Because you no longer seek validation from outside sources. You are your own anchor, and no external force can pull you off course unless you let it. The more you rely on your inner wisdom, the less susceptible you become to the tactics that others use to manipulate or control you. Ultimately, psychological immunity isn't about avoiding conflict or running away from negative people. It's about transforming the way you interact with those dynamics. It's about becoming so attuned to your own psyche, your own energy, that nothing can affect you without your consent. You stop being a passive participant and start becoming the conscious creator of your own reality. By illuminating the unconscious, you awaken the power to shape your life, your relationships, and your emotional world. You've heard the warning signs, seen the subtle manipulations, and perhaps even recognized them in your own life. But now what? What's the next step in reclaiming your power? It starts with awareness, and from there, you build a psychological immunity that no one can break. The forces of rejection, projection, and subtle control only have power when they remain hidden. But by turning the light on them, you begin to transform those dynamics. In the end, you don't have to fight every battle or confront every hidden agenda. What you need is the strength to see through the smoke and mirrors. What you need is the courage to look inside yourself, confront your own shadows, and cultivate a sense of self that no external force can touch. As you do this, you will realize that the power was always within you. The power to protect yourself, to stand firm, and to live authentically, no matter the rejection that may come your way. So ask yourself, are you ready to face the unconscious forces that influence you? Are you ready to step into the light of self-awareness and reclaim your true power? Because once you do, you'll never look at the world, or yourself, the same way again. If you found this video helpful, I highly recommend checking out another one I've created on Carl Jung's teachings. Carl Jung, The Trap of Being a Good Person. These two topics are deeply connected, and understanding the role of projection is crucial to breaking free from the trap of trying to fit into society's expectations. Trust me, the content in that video will blow your mind and give you even more insights into your own behavior and relationships. So don't miss out. Click the link in the card to watch it now. And if you haven't yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It helps the channel grow and keeps bringing you more transformative content.